Hi, everybody. Pen here. Welcome back. We have part 2 of the interview with Stephanie Olga because last time my battery died, and so that was unfortunate. We couldn't finish, but I'm glad that she's able to come back again and to finish the second part of this interview. Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right. So we left off with topic of essential oils. So she went into details about where she gets her essential oils, and now we're going to be moving on to other topics. Last time she talked about sound healing and mentioned Reiki, but didn't go into more detail about those. And also she mentioned, or she didn't mention it in the episode, but she did share with me that she works with mala bees and how she incorporates that with her clients and in her practice. So let's just begin with continue off, I guess, with the sound healing and then moving on to the Reiki. So sound healing, how do you use that in your practice, and what are some of the examples?
So a couple of the tools that I use regularly for myself and some of my clients in my classes, I have currently a set of 5 alchemy crystal singing bowls. So each of them is individual and unique and has a blend of different earth elements, crystals, gemstones, different precious metals. So they can be a wide variety of minerals and earth components, and they're basically molded into these beautiful bowls, very similar to Tibetan or Nepalese singing bowls, something that we've used on and off again for different generations. And the idea behind the singing bowl is that it's very similar and an easily portable mini version of the gong, essentially. So while they had practical uses, and people sometimes do some water pujas or different ceremonies and rituals where they fill the bowls with items and maybe offer them or possibly consume them later, they also have healing properties as far as from a vibrational standpoint. So with the gong and some of the other bowls and different items you play, you can even measure and see and get what is referred to as that binaural beat situation, where, for sake of argument, say we're using 220 and 222. The two 220s are essentially going to cancel themselves out, and you're going to be left with the 2 hertz. And that's going to be the brain wave pattern, essentially. That's going to be the wave that's oscillating and the wave that the brain now starts to resonate with. It's going to start to modify its own sine wave and start to slow down. So you can use these tools to really drop yourself into a place of meditation without necessarily having a long-term meditative practice. So almost like a little bit of a cheat, but for some people, a really great place to start, because in that time period, you have the ability to really relax, which not everybody has gotten to quite yet as far as having a meditation seat. So you have to build up some time when you're going to sit upright in a beautiful conscious meditation. Well, that takes some time and it takes some commitment. And while it's 100% valuable and where people should, maybe strive to kind of get to, the sound healing offers a unique opportunity to let people slip in and out of this space and then possibly realize the importance or the significance of a real meditation practice. So in these sound healings, they have the opportunity to drop their body into a very deep place of relaxation, to literally switch the wave pattern of what their brain is doing at that time. And that will allow them to slip into a different place of consciousness for many people. It sometimes takes a couple sound healings because you sort of have to get used to really delving into the relaxation portion, being comfortable there for, a stretch of at least 45 minutes of trying to maintain some stillness, and really just beginning to be comfortable and vulnerable lying there in that position and opening yourself up consciously to be able to receive all of this. It can be very noticeable for the central nervous system. Again, so for some people, it takes a couple different sound healing experiences for them to sometimes drop in as deep. But once they get there, you start to hear these stories from everyone, how relaxed they felt, how after several sessions they were able to go back into the rest of their daily life and maintain a level of peace without the anxiety, without some of the extra tensions and stresses that the body will put onto you mentally and emotionally when you're just not physically comfortable. If the body is in a constant state of unrest or dis-ease, essentially that's going to manifest itself everywhere else. So by having this opportunity to relax, you get to heal and repair the body. It's a place that most of us don't even get close to when we sleep. We toss and we turn. We are sort of subconsciously listening to the things that are going on in our environment. Maybe we have kids at home. Maybe we're crashing at someone else's house for a little while. There's pets running around. You get in and out of a dream process. And then at some point, if you're there long enough, a bit of a sleep paralysis can kick in. And even when you think, I'm mentally awake again, I should just get up, we struggle. We have that constant battle with ourselves. I can't. I feel like I need 5 more minutes, and this goes on and on. But if you could drop into these places of relaxation and let the body rejuvenate and the cells actually begin to repair themselves, you begin to repair all of yourself, because healthy, happy cells are going to split and make an exact replica and make more healthy, happy cells. So from a bunch of different angles, the sound healing is beautiful for people. From a meditation standpoint, from an illness and immunity standpoint, and from a elevated consciousness standpoint. When you get to sort of have these experiences where you begin to move the consciousness around or pull it out and away from the body, you start to realize that your consciousness will exist in and outside the body. So some people can get a little bit more comfortable with the idea of the death process and realize, oh, this isn't it. This physical form that's going to deteriorate at some point, it's not the end all be all. I've moved my consciousness without my body. I know what it's like to exist in that space between. So from, again, many different angles, I think sound healing opens a lot of doors that other people either might not necessarily be physically ready and capable of, or they might just not be mentally prepared to say, I'm going to go on this kind of journey. So it's a very gentle way to kind of nudge them along their path.
That's amazing. I'd like to learn more. As you're talking, came up with a few questions. So my number one question is, for those that are not familiar with this, can they just listen to it, like play on the phone, for example, or like a computer, just download some sort of CD to listen to it, like a meditation CD? Is that the same thing as if you're actually using the bowl and or the dong, or just to use it that way?
Yeah, I encourage people, especially when you don't have access, either space, you don't have somebody in your area who offers it, or just financially, if you just need to have a supplemental vibrational tool at home with you. A lot of people use the binaural beats at home with a headset on, so speakers on both sides of the ears, because the sound wave purposely is recorded in such a way that it should oscillate from one hemisphere of the brain to the other. So when you're in a space, that naturally happens. When you're playing the crystal bowls, when you're playing the gong in such a way, the sound current almost starts to oscillate and throw itself around the room in a bit of a circular pattern. So you hear that flux from one hemisphere to the other side. When you're at home on a computer or on a phone, you might not notice it quite as much. So earbuds or headphones, something like that, is usually recommended. I can sometimes get away with it if I put the speaker right at the head of wherever I'm laying. So as it oscillates from one side to the other, I can hear it on one ear more than I can on the other, and that sometimes works. If you don't have any, earbuds or headphones that are comfortable to lie down with, you can still listen to it. It will still work. The difference is, again, that oscillation might not be quite as noticeable. So you might take a little while to kind of drop into the space. It might take a little bit longer for that oscillation to fluctuate around the room to cancel out those wave patterns and drop you into that really slow moving wave. But it's definitely something that people can utilize. There are a ton of wonderful meditative artists who have put their soundscapes on YouTube for free. So I've always told my classes, you can Google some stuff or YouTube some stuff and then come back with some questions, and I'm always happy to answer. You might also find online that you can specifically pick the hertz behind it. So possibly to manifest abundance, to manifest creativity, to drop into a deeper state of peace. So just being mindful of those tools as well. It won't be as noticeably resonant, I guess you could say, in person. There's definitely something to it. If you have access to somebody who plays live, it's beautiful. Or if you have access to somebody who builds soundscape where they record themselves live and then just add on a few other layers of some electronic sound, those I think are really nice. Anything that is a really high quality live sound recording, I also always recommend. The artist plays different almost every time they play, and there's a little bit of heart and soul that goes into all of that as well. Not to say that people who don't build beautiful electronic soundscapes don't pour themselves and their creativity into it. You just kind of find what works best for you. But if that's all you have available, I highly encourage it. And again, maybe just try to seek out some variety. Know that some are very much computer-based and others are going to be used layered using different instruments. And so I recommend trying to find a variety of them and then seeing which one works best for you. It's like any meditations tool where you can use it and you never have to feel stuck with it. If you feel like it worked for me for a while and I'm not getting the same outcome, you might be vibrating at a different frequency. You might have elevated to a frequency where you either don't need it currently right now, or you just might never need it again. There's a lot of meditation tools and even using mantra and things like that to change the sound current and vibrate different parts of the body or different parts of the brain. When you stop needing that, sometimes different things just fall away. I've even explained to people, especially when you're going through sound healing or a meditative transformation, even people in your life that you thought would always be there and you try hard to maintain the relationship, even sometimes those people just start to fall away, because what frequency you put out there is going to have a lot to do with what you get back. And sometimes there are just people who resonate at a different frequency, and no matter how hard you try, they just start to fall away. And I tell people, just be grateful for the time you spent together and the life lesson that you learned together, and just allow it to happen, because sometimes it's meant to be. You're meant to lose some things so that you can create space so that these wonderful new things begin to manifest in your world.
That's so cool to experience. I'm gonna have to try that. So you said in person, when the person trying to meditate or trying to be in that state has to listen to somebody else play, or they can play as they're doing the practice?
It's kind of both. It depends on the individual. I know especially for me, when I play the gong, I definitely get into a deeper meditative, maybe trance-like experience. And I sort of just drop into the place where there's a lot of space, and it's almost as if you allow the playing to come through you. I imagine there are other artists or musicians who feel the same way, where you almost surrender and you let the music flow out of you. And so it stops being this egotistical, mindful creation that I'm doing anything. I'm not really doing anything at some point. I show up and I choose to participate and live a life of service. But at some point during the sound healing as a practitioner, you kind of move over, you give way, and you make space for these amazing vibrations. So some people, just playing is part of their vibrational practice. practice, their meditative practice. But I also know for me that it's wonderful to surrender entirely at times. And I attend other people's sound healings regularly and am able to get into a completely different place because I can surrender the physical body. I don't have to worry about holding muscle tension anywhere, holding any mallet, or having to be conscious at some level to continue the performance. So depending on who you are, there are people who buy maybe just one bowl and they sit with their one bowl and that's part of their meditation practice and they love it and they never use that to reach into anybody else's space. It becomes theirs and it's their sacred tool. Whereas other people will continue to fluctuate. They'll buy new sound healing devices and they'll share them. They'll use them on themselves, on their friends. And you just continue to feel what's called to you because as you play more and more and you're surrounded and embraced by these beautiful, powerful, loving vibrations, the journey changes. Any of your expectations just get blown out of the water. You know, anything you start to conceptualize at the beginning just constantly is in motion and changing because you're watching the universe and the soundscape continue to ebb and flow. And it's really how you learn to interact with the rest of life as well. Letting go of any expectation and just watching the journey, watching the unfolding happening without having to get in the way all the time and manipulate and control the situation. Because at the end of the day, we don't really have much control over it anyway. We only have control over how we react to it. So just keeping that in mind and knowing that every issue or problem or obstacle can really be changed by a perception, by a different state of mind. So you kind of learn to bring that into everything.
Speaking of the, how do you, during the session, right? Either you play or somebody else plays the instrument and there's pretty much just the music, the sound. No talking, like no guiding through it, right? You're just like experiencing the sound.
Each artist has some room, some leeway to modify and to personalize each one of their experiences. I would say it's like going to a live acoustic concert. You know the artist, you know some of the songs, but how they're going to be played and what guest artist is going to show up and the melody and the tempo might change just a little bit, but still the same lyrics, still the same recognizable piece. It's a little bit like that for some people. They have a guideline or an outline that they maybe like to follow because hopefully they've seen how it works. Hopefully it's not just somebody who gets up there and decides, I'm full of something that I know is right and there's a lot of ego or personality in the way. But hopefully it's just somebody who goes up there and has put in some time and effort into their practice and offered it to enough people that they've seen what works and what doesn't work. The best practitioner is really somebody who continues to embrace everything it means to be a student and to constantly be learning. So most of the time I tell my clients and my students, you guys are really the best teacher. By watching your reactions to things, by listening to your feedback, you kind of shape how you tailor each class. And sometimes you'll know, even if you had an idea, you might walk into the room and immediately know that that's not going to work. That's not the space or the energy that you feel within that room today. The instruments are sometimes kind of funny too, and I don't know if other artists have experienced the same thing, but I know with my tools, they can be very finicky with the other energy in the room. So just playing one bowl in one room with one person or taking that same bowl and playing it in a room with a dozen people, it's going to sound different. It's going to play differently. The time of day, what's going on, celestially, if it's a full moon, if people are really extra just agitated and tense, you might need to guide them through some relaxation to get them to let go. A really great place to get started is to do some breath work. It's one of the fastest and most efficient tools that we have to drop into a place of relaxation. Those deep diaphragmatic breaths will stimulate the vagus nerve, and it's going to switch on the parasympathetic nervous system. So when we get out of that fight or flight mode where our cortisol and our adrenal levels and other, stress hormones are too high, working and concentrating on the breath is going to be one of the most efficient ways to drop us into that space. So for most people, some kind of guide in the beginning is usually a good place to work through. It might be that somebody plays for a while and then goes back to speaking about something, either maybe helping somebody set an intention, sometimes trying to keep the group just aware and in the space. You can sometimes tell by the look on people's face or the tension that they're holding in the body that the thought process has carried them away. They're still receiving the beautiful vibrations, but mentally they've checked out. They've left the room. So sometimes dropping a gentle suggestion during the sound healing to invite them to come back, to be aware of their breath sensation, the sensation or the movement in the body. All of those things are sometimes very helpful for people. Now, if you have a group or a client that you've been working with regularly who you know can drop right into the space very quickly, then sometimes you don't need all that extra verbiage. So it really just depends on how you read the room, how people are feeling, just on an energetic level collectively, and what speaks to you. You might change from day to day, and how you approach a situation and the other things that you're dealing with are going to come into that room as well. So also being mindful to kind of remove some of that out of the way. And are you speaking as much to yourself as the practitioner as you are to the group? So sometimes all of you need a gentle suggestion or a reminder to get started.
It's a lot to think about, be aware and observe. Is it like almost like a hypnotic, they're in a hypnotic state though?
Yeah, I think some people have definitely compared it. Some of the tools that some hypnotherapists use are very similar. That's one of the issues that you have to be a little bit careful, because the idea is when people are in that state that they're more susceptible to suggestion, which in and of itself can be true, because when you drop into that low brainwave pattern, that's where they say the power of meditation and manifestation really takes hold. Because in that place that was typically for the subconscious movement only, you've now become conscious of. You can now take advantage of being in that space where you can begin to manifest what it is that you want. So when you're dealing with hypnosis, or what in the West we start to refer to as yoga nidra, which is an old classical technique of having people in this space and being able to suggest different spiritual aspects of their journey and relaxation. So some people are using that, and you just want to make sure that the practitioner you're involved with, whether it's something that's like hypnotherapy or yoga nidra, that they're removing all of their expectations and their ego out of the equation, which in today's society can be very difficult. So it's something to be very mindful of when you go to those kind of classes. Who's leading the class, how long they've been practicing, because it's not just how long you've been teaching, it's really how long you've been studying in a whole, because without your own personal practice, the ego doesn't get out of the way. So you can teach all day long. Anybody can build a class, but if you're not living by the limbs and by the sacred philosophy or the classical sutras, then you're not doing all the work, and you're not getting this identification of the self out of the way so that you can offer the purest, most connected level of source to the people that you come in contact with. So just making sure it was, even something that I dealt with when I moved into becoming a more full-time Reiki practitioner. Because when you start, you see how powerful it is. And it's this amazing healing modality. And the mind thinks, wow, I could be this conduit for change or for healing. And one of the things that occurred to me during my meditations were that is my thought process. I might need not to heal somebody from whatever they're dealing with, but maybe to just help them deal with and feel what they're experiencing. Because you might need to have this illness or injury to learn something. You might never have been receptive to inviting other people into your space and to allowing them to take care of you. And that might be one of the life journeys that you need in this realm. So for me or any healer to come in with the intention of quote unquote healing, it's fine as long as you're not looking at it from only that one perspective of healing, of, oh, this person says they have this liver dysfunction or this cancer cell or whatever the multitude of problems might be, but rather to get out of the way and trust that that individual self knows what it needs and to just serve that purpose. So to really get rid of the idea that really any idea, any preconceived notion that you think you might be here for, and just offer the purest connection to the source. You know, that prana, the qigong, the Reiki, it's all the same. It's that eternal life source that flows through everything that we talk about, that never really dies. It just transmutates from one form to the other. We know that energy doesn't dissipate. It just kind of, relocates itself for all intents and purposes. So to just realize that that's a lot of what's going on, and to get out of that headspace to allow the energy to move through and do what it knows it's supposed to do. Because it's all of our notions and ideas and our belief systems that really become limiting and get in the way of that kind of stuff, which is one of the reasons some of the energy healings and the sound healings are so beneficial in the beginning for people, because they can drop out of that conscious restriction that happens for some people. Oh, I don't know if I believe in this, or I don't know if this works. Somebody else dragged me here kind of mentality. And when they drop into that space, even if they think they're kind of asleep, the shift starts to happen. If they come back even just a couple times, you really start to notice. And then you see that seeds were planted and they start to open up and become more receptive. So I would just tell people, kind of get out of your own way.
Okay, you mentioned Reiki. So how do you, how do I say this? Because you're working on a few things, you're experiencing them. And so when you started getting involved with anyone in particular, do you kind of like just basically, for example, dedicate your time to Reiki, practice that, and then once you get good at it, and then you move on to something else, or you kind of learn them all together, like at the same time?
I think everyone's journey with that is different. The people who I have come in contact with, many of them said, I knew I had something my whole life. I just didn't know how to channel it, how to deliver it, what to do with it. Other people have just tried. They thought, oh, this sounds interesting, let me give it a go. And they either realized the potency of it or it didn't resonate with them, and some didn't keep the practice. For me, it just happened to be this snowball effect. When I decided to go through my first yoga teacher training, I resonated with somebody who was bringing quantum physics into the aspect of some of the teachings. And so, of course, that resonated with me. I was thrilled and delighted when I realized that that was the avenue, or one of them, that my teacher was going to take, because I had already went there in my head. I had already cognitively decided that this makes sense, and the two things together are saying the same thing. So to finally hear someone else say out loud that they got it from that viewpoint, that perspective, and conceptually, was working with those kind of explanations, I was really excited, and I knew that this is where I needed to be. And while I was there, I met my Reiki master, and it just unfolded. I had somebody who asked me to go to a Reiki circle. I met my Reiki master. All of it happened within just a couple months' time. And she had approached me and said, I did a meditation and kind of sent out a calling to see who might be open and available to receiving this gift. And she said, your name came up. Is this something that you would be interested in? And I had recently discovered it and thought, yes, it's definitely a very powerful current that I feel connected to. And that's just how it happened. The two things kind of went side by side and took off around the same time. And I just continued to see the transformative powers of both of them. And it's one of those things, we say it in both sides of the coin. When the student's ready, the teacher will appear. And when the teacher's ready, the student will appear. So I'm of the firm belief that the people who need whatever gift it is that I have to offer, they'll show up. And those are the people that I'm meant to help in one way or another, transition or transform. I don't do a ton of outside hardcore marketing. It's a lot of just word of mouth and whoever kind of falls into my space, and I allow it to just organically take shape.
Okay. That's great that it all happened all at once and, you know, you're ready for it. So it all worked out. And they're all similar. They're all, you know, tackling. Yeah. As for the mala, so how do you incorporate that, and can you give some examples?
So I actually really love to do work with crystals. The singing bowls I use are infused with many different varieties. Even when I was young, you know, and I had them, I just thought I was collecting rocks. And at some point I let society convince me that I had too many rocks. So I thought I can't keep all these. I move around a lot, and one by one I started to get rid of them. I actually have a good friend in South Florida, and I sometimes sneak little rocks into her rock garden and see if she notices. So I just love to have that hands-on experience with a different mineral component of the earth. I think it's a really beautiful energetic exchange, and it's something else that you notice almost immediately for some people. You can really feel the vibrational frequency that come from different crystals. So to have them in raw form is beautiful, but from a meditative standpoint, I really love and enjoy doing work with malas, partly because I really like to use mantra. I don't necessarily do it in a ceremonial or a ritualistic way that many people kind of get stuck into. And it might work for them, because when you choose a mantra that resonates most with you, it really does just that. It's this resonance that you feel can pull you out of a state, of a funk, of a place of mind. Because when that vibration changes within, it starts to change without. And one of the most powerful vibrational sound healing tools that you have available is actually your own voice. And even if you think, oh, I can't sing, there is a space where you can still vibrate. And it doesn't become about making a certain sound that you have an expectation to hit a note or harmonize specifically with someone else. But it's this resonance that comes from deep within, and it's a sound current that your cells are familiar with. So singing or chanting really helps to put you in a place that's so harmonious for all of your own systems. So working with mantra, I just think, can be very lovely. It can be very similar to, like I said, when something vibrates with you for a little while and you hold on to it. And then there have been times I've tried to call up a mantra that I've used for years, and I just can't bring the words to my mind. I can't call them to the forefront of my cognition, because they're just not meant to serve me in that moment. There's a different one. I might sit down thinking, oh, I'm going to just use this mantra for a few rounds, and a different one will completely implant itself in the forefront of my consciousness. And I'll just surrender and think, okay, this must be the mantra I need to be using. And then again, there are other times I sit down and think, oh, what was I doing yesterday? And for the life of me, I wouldn't be able to remember it, because it's just not calling to me. So I tell people that as well. When you pick a mantra, don't necessarily think you have to hold on to it forever. It can just be for a minute, for a day, for a week. Some people like to try to do one for a sadhana, which is basically usually about a 40-day commitment. If you can do something for 40 days, you typically can see the outcome and how the habit pattern has reorganized and rerouted itself. So in that aspect, I like to work with them as well, so people can commit a very short amount of time to a practice that you can see the effects of, say, a month later. It didn't seem like much. I just have to sit here. It also is a good transition for people who are moving from that crazy, chaotic chatter to that peace of mind. And at some point, every method gets dropped because it's just that. It's a tool for a desired outcome. Eventually, we drop the desire and we drop the tool that we're using to get there. But in the beginning, it can be very helpful for somebody to just use that tool to concentrate their mind on something else, on a vibration that's harmonious to them. So over time, those old Sanskrit words or whatever ancient language you might have found a chant that works for you, those vibrations start to have an effect. The cells start to have the memory of that. And whatever, again, is vibrating out is what's going to be the same thing that you're attracting in. So in and of itself, it's essentially your own version of sound healing. And to do the work with the malas for me is so rewarding because I can use these crystals and have this hands-on experience with something that I think is so beautiful and powerful for other people. And I can make a tool for them. So I don't regularly just make a bunch and sell them online. Usually I will make each piece specifically for an individual. Sometimes I'm called to make something out of what I have, and then it just sells. It just finds a home. I always tell people, you don't choose your malas choose you, especially the first couple. If you're listening, they kind of pull you in, and whether you use them in the beginning for your mantra or just sometimes as a piece of jewelry to, hold on to that frequency, sometimes as a talisman to go on your journey, to have something to kind of root you back in this physical world so that you feel like you can come back and finish your life expectation. But I really enjoy doing that and working with people who say, this is what I'd like to change. This is what I'd like to surrender. These are the gifts that I'm working on. These are the things that I'd like to invite into my life. And then find the right crystals, the right beads that bring those vibrations to them, and then allow them to have it and keep it with them on their journey. So something that they have that's really special, and essentially from start to finish manifested just for them.
Oh my God, that's so interesting. I'm thinking, I love all crystals and all malas. So how am I going to choose? If you put a whole bunch in front of me, I'm like, it's impossible for you to pick one.
That's why you get to be part of the creative process. And so at every step, while we're going through it, you can say no, or I changed my mind. And then sometimes you have a couple. I definitely have a couple different malas, and then there are days or weeks where I can't put one down, or I wear it every time I leave the house. And then I'll put it away and I won't touch it for a month, or a certain time goes and I'll grab a different one, or I'll want it one day because it's heavy and I feel like it's really rooting me down, and another day I can't stand it because it's too cumbersome. So they kind of change, and depending on what you need. I also tell people, if your mala or your crystals are missing, don't look too hard for them, because sometimes they do that. They kind of meander and they wander away, and they have this unique ability to hide themselves when you don't need them for something. And the minute you thought they were lost and I must not have needed it, or you completely even forgot you had it, they all of a sudden show up and you're like, I don't remember that being there. And then all of a sudden, sometimes it's just because you just need a little bit of a pick-me-up or a specific vibration to maybe help your decision-making process this week. Maybe you have a creative venture that you're going on, or a difficult relationship at work or at home that you're trying to deal with or change. So just knowing that they're magical, like little gnomes running around the house when no one's looking.
That's so funny, because I always miss that. They're always somewhere I can't find. I was like, oh, come on, I had a whole bunch in one place. I don't know where to put it again. I thought it was just me. Oh yeah, people say jade, if you wear it like as a bracelet, it'll grow with you and it will change. Does that apply to crystals as well?
Yeah, I think they're all that way. And then same as sometimes when if you choose not to listen to the sign and they're trying to kind of get away or take a time out, they'll break. In a real extreme circumstances, I've seen what looks, very dramatic, or if you weren't there to see it, you would never believe it. But it's almost like they jump, they leave, the bracelet or the ring will break, the thing that was way back on the counter somehow found its way to the edge of the counter. And if you're not receptive, sometimes they will actively get out of the way for you.
Okay, I have a few more questions. As for the crystals, they said you need to like kind of cleanse it. How you do it? Because people suggested to use salt, sea salt, to soak it after a use to get rid of if it absorbs any negative energy, and also use the sunlight to put it under the direct sun, so that it could cleanse it out. Is that true?
Yeah, people have a few different techniques. When you think of it, it basically, again, comes down to a vibration. So it depends on the crystal itself and what kind of properties it has, because there are some that will pull negative vibrations or frequencies and situational outcomes to the surface. So that kind of stuff you want to remove out of the way, because it's meant to draw it up and then eliminate it. And you can do that with a couple different techniques. You can choose to, some people, I like running water. I like it for myself. And so I also incorporate it with my crystals. For me, running water helps to move just anything that might have attached itself. And it's because it's constantly moving, it's helpful. Other people like to even bury their crystals to get the vibration of the earth to kind of wrap itself around in a little bit of a Mother Earth kind of hug, if you will. I think there's probably something to that in the sense that we spend way too much time covered by an electromagnetic blanket. So we're constantly dealing with all this wireless, Bluetooth, all these other frequencies that are not helpful or healthy to us as a whole. So I think there could be something to that. Letting them participate in a sound healing can also be cleansing, because that vibration is moving. So if you're at a really powerful event, putting the crystals up at the front next to the gongs and the bowls where they're really going to get hit by the vibration, because that's going to cause anything else to sort of move. Whatever the most powerful vibration is, the two things, that are near it basically are going to kind of come into harmony. So you want something that's more powerful to move whatever it is that you think you need to move. So for each person, something's going to speak to them. You can even maybe put your crystals next to a salt lamp. I like putting them in the sun sometimes. I think for certain crystals, especially quartz, anything in the quartz family seems to cleanse itself for me when I put it in the sun. Again, just because it's such a powerful source of energy. There are other stones that do a little more well with the sun when it's reflected from the moon. So it's still sunlight, but during the full moon process, it's slightly different energies. There's more water element involved. So some people prefer to put all their crystals out during the full moon. I also like to put them out during a really intensive storm. So if there's a lot of lightning, a lot of wind, maybe a light rain, I like to put them outside, because you're clearing so much. I mean, how does it feel when you go outside after a crazy storm? It's super calm. You almost feel like all the crap was there that just kind of got blown away. So I kind of feel the same with the crystals, that there's so much powerful energy during the storm with the electromagnetic activity of the lightning versus an artificial source. So each person is going to feel called to do something different. And I never would say that this is right or wrong. If you feel that that's what's working, that's, part of the process in and of itself. Belief is really powerful. So if it speaks to you, if you feel like your crystal is telling you to bury it, by all means, bury it. If you think it needs a bath, give it a bath. But those are a couple things. I feel that the more dense the mineral is, the less I seem to put it in the sun. So the ones that are a little bit more, like I said, of the quartz family, have some clear, opaque qualities where you can actually see the sunlight go through them. Those for me tend to end up in the sun more. I think the ones that are more dense for me become a little bit more earthy. And I don't know if that's intuition or if that's just what they're asking for, and it just happens to be how I feel in that moment. But the heavier, darker, denser stones for me seem to resonate more earth, and those lighter, clear ones seem to be more light for me. And so that's just been part of my process.
Wow, so involved, so much to learn. So interesting. Actually, each topic can be like a whole episode by itself.
I know. Oh, I lost.
What books do you recommend?
Oh,
yeah.
I have actually coming soon a whole page on the website for recommended reading. So I've been digging out a ton of books and saving the little thumbnail so I could put a whole collection together, because I do think that that's definitely a powerful question. And I think that there have been some amazing reads along the way. And depending on where I was, which is why I'd like to have the collection, why I've kind of been going back through trying to pull out some that were gems that I don't even remember right away. Because where I was in the journey would have an effect on which book I voted for at the time. I've even picked up some and I thought, I don't know about this. And one in particular, I remember when I was going through the death process with someone else who was so close to me, and I felt this crazy wave of grief, even though I knew this energy or this soul was still around, was still communicating. I still couldn't help this physical response I was having. And, a couple things kind of helped. In the one book, I felt like it kept talking to me, and I tried to read it and then I put it down. I was like, no. And it wasn't even just a couple weeks later, I think, I picked it up and I couldn't put it down. I had to finish it in like the 2 days that I had. And that's going to happen. So I have a ton of books, if you guys stay tuned, that I'm going to post. Just a couple to throw out there that I've spoken about recently with people that have kind of come full circle. The Untethered Soul, I believe, by Michael Singer, I think is a really great one. A good way to pull yourself into that space where you're actually aware of the chatter that goes on and how crazy it sometimes can be. I really enjoyed Dan Millman and the story he has about being the gymnast. Oh, what's it called? See, this is also part of the problem. I'll have to think of that one. He's written a couple, actually. I think he has a bit of a series now. And it's funny because the first time I read it, I so resonated with the journey he was on, and I loved it. And I couldn't help but years later, I think it was over 10 years later when I reread it, I identified with the teacher in it, and I thought that was really comical. I never had expected to go that far. So yeah, just stay tuned for that. I have quite the long list that I think will be, received very well.
That's awesome. I can't wait for the list. Definitely keep me posted, and I'll once it's up, I'll share it with in the description and share it with everybody.
Awesome.
Have you, I don't know if you've written a book or you plan on writing your own book, because you have so much knowledge. Put that in books.
I do have a lot, and I sometimes forget. And it's not until I do stuff like this or I go to a workshop where people have the freedom to just ask all these different kinds of questions. And by the time I'm done, I'm almost exhausted. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of talking, for somebody who likes to sit and be quiet. And I really find that it just wants to pour out. It really just keeps coming. And so my last 40-day challenge for myself was to make sure I wrote every day. So I am in the process of attempting, and it is one of the messages that I get regularly. That's always been one of my gifts when I was younger and moving through the beginning of what, we have middle school in the US, and I had started writing poetry, and that was how I was expressing and dealing with emotions. And that stayed, at the forefront for many years. And then the writing transitioned to a lot of research papers, being at university and being interested in some of the fields I would always delve a little bit deeper than the regular requirement for the class. And I kept finding myself going a little bit further and just, going down what I always call the rabbit hole. And I stopped writing for the necessity of needing to emotionally express myself, and was able to completely, write from a different perspective for a different audience and for a different outcome. And then I realized I was decent at it. And I have all this information. So I have written many articles that I want to get out to different meditation magazines and different sources. I am struggling with that, I guess, type A control mindset, where there's definitely that thread of perfectionism that I'm pulling out one piece at a time, and just trying to get some of those articles out there and then worry about editing and amending them later. So what my process is going to be for the next round is to print out a lot, or everything I can kind of find, and then just spread it out all over the place so that I can have a hard copy. I'm still an old school. I need a book. I need something physical and tangible to touch. While I love and appreciate my keyboard because my mind moves very rapidly, so typing has been a tool for me to get so much information out of my skull faster than I can write. I still need to compile these bits and pieces in what I think are, a cognitive, comprehensible order. So hopefully at some point it will, again, like the malas and the other things, I'll just get out of the way and it will come together on its own. So right now there's been a push for two different things. And one is writing about my stories and my travel journey, as far as the places I've gone and the spiritual aspect of it. And then the other is from an informational standpoint on how to use these tools that I've been so blessed to be able to gather and give them to an audience in such a way that you guys can actually utilize it. I think one of the things I struggle with is because there's so much stuff that's already out there, and so much of it is not great. And I don't want it to just fall into, this space where it doesn't reach the right people. More importantly for me isn't writing a book and having it sell. It's if I wrote information and 2 people read it and they were just completely blown out of their reality into a space that helped them to achieve some sort of awakening, that would be enough. It doesn't have to be this grandiose thing on such a large scale. But like you said, sometimes I can't help it. Someone asks a question, all this information just continues to pour out. I leave and I still think, oh, but there are 10 more things I could have added. So we'll see.
I love it. You gotta get those books out. Have series or something. I'm like, that's amazing. All right. Even do courses maybe. Like,
yeah.
Sessions up.
That is something that's definitely in the works right now, is starting to, again, not build a following from a sense of an egotistical standpoint, but to show people that this is something that I'm passionate about, that I do have a lot of knowledge and a lot of life experience with, so that they believe in it and that they'll want to come to those things. So I've been working this year, since it's the first time I've kind of stayed put, knowing that I was going to stay here and integrate myself into the community that's here, trying to get the word out there and let people know that, read a couple of these articles or listen to a couple of my talks on a few different things, and you'll see how much is there, how much substance is really available, so that people will want to come to these courses. So it's definitely something that I can see somewhere in my internal vision. I see these big, beautiful rooms and outdoor spaces full of people. So we just have to get them in, start having these courses.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I could probably have you on for another episode. All right. I guess, well, those are my questions for now. And I can't wait for your list.
Yep, I'll get on it because it's almost done. I just have to add a little bit and then get it up online. So I'll get working on that within the next couple weeks.
Awesome, great. Definitely keep me posted.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me back.
And I don't know if listeners are basically, if you watch the YouTube, you can really see your aura. Like your aura is really like profound. Maybe, I don't know, because of the background it helps.
Yeah.
But it's really, really obvious.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. All right. Thank you so much again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks. I look forward to seeing you soon.
You too.
Bye.